Hello everybody, so today I'm going to be talking about David Warner's captaincy ban. I have talked about this a number of times, including at the time and soon afterwards, and I also did a 1 year review, but my opinion hasn't really changed. So if you want a quick summary of that, I believed at the time, and I still believe today, that Cameron Bancroft was treated leniently, and Mitchell Starc should have also faced penalty, but not a very big one. Steve Smith was treated a little bit harshly, and David Warner was treated appallingly badly. So in other words, I think that we got it all around the wrong way. So I'm going to rehash that for what my conclusion was at the time, which is still my conclusion today, and then I'm going to apply that to what the current situation is with David Warner asking for a captaincy ban to be revoked. So first of all, there was some ball tampering. There's no question about that. Now, it's not the first time of ball tampering, and there has been ball tampering since then. There was someone in Sri Lanka did a ball tampering thing, I believe got a 2-match ban. That was it. That's it. And that's what ball tampering gets. So why did this one blow up so much? So the first thing we want to look at is what should have happened. And then we're going to look at what did happen and why it happened that way. So what should have happened? So we had ball tampering caught on TV by the South African video people. Now we don't know if there were other ball tampering. I think there was. I think there was ball tampering by South Africa as well in the same match. And there probably was a little bit by some of our bowlers as well. They were running their spikes over the balls and rubbing it into the pitch. But Cameron Bancroft's was perhaps a bit more obvious. He used sandpaper. It wasn't one of these things where you get a little lolly or you get a bit of sweat and it's a bit ambiguous and you say, that wasn't ball tampering. This was a bit more obvious. This was sort of the level of when Shahid Afridi bit the ball. And Shahid Afridi said it was a joke, but he was rightly banned. And in the same way, Cameron Bancroft deserved to be banned. Anyone who's suggesting he didn't, he's completely ignoring all of cricket's history and the rules. He absolutely deserved to be banned. But how long was the ban, or how long should it have been? So for simply tampering with the ball with sandpaper, so sandpaper being a very obvious one, so very different to sort of accidental bit of lolly or whatever, a bit of sweat. So the bit of accidental one, which is just borderline, only barely ball tampering, would get a 1-match ban. And this is the more severe level. So it should get a 2-match ban. Maybe even a 3, but I'm going to just say 2. I believe that's the current limit. So 2-match ban for that. But then the issue comes that the umpires approached him after seeing it on the TV and they said, well, did you tamper with the ball? And he said, no, I just put a black felt sunglasses case on there. Now, because he lied to the umpires and he had the sandpaper and he lied to the umpires, that automatically gets at least another 1-match ban. And because of the level of lying, because he made it seem so innocent, because you're allowed to use a sunglasses case on there, but you're not allowed to use sandpaper, because it was so severe, it probably warrants an extra 2 matches. So right then, 4-match ban. Then we got the press conference. Now, of course, I'm going to assume that Steve Smith was repeating what Cameron Bancroft told him. We don't know that for absolute certain, although pretty much we do. But in the press conference, Steve Smith said, well, he actually just used the sandpaper or whatever or used sticky tape. That's right, he used sticky tape to get some dirt off the pitch, which is still ball tampering, but it's a rather low level. So he was, in other words, arguing for a 1-match ban instead of 2. And that was a lie. Because that was another lie, and because there were all these other lies, you're sort of now looking at 7 or 8-match ban. And then he involved his captain, Steve Smith. Steve Smith deserved to have a 1-match ban for that, for lying, for not checking his facts. Even though you can say, oh, well, Cameron Bancroft was the one that lied, Steve Smith didn't know. But because Steve Smith didn't check it, he deserves a 1-match ban. So, because Bancroft involved his captain, that ban is now looking like a year out of the game. So, a year. That should have been a 1-year ban for him. He got 9 months. He got off lightly. And that's before we get into anything else. Now, according to Australian cricket's precedents, and we have been very harsh on potential captains, And one example is, I think it was 1996, when Ricky Ponting was bashed up outside a nightclub, and instead of the perpetrators being questioned and investigated and all that, he was actually banned from the cricket team for almost a whole year. And it just seemed completely unfair. But they said, oh well, because he was drunk and allowed himself to be bashed up. Just seems completely unfair, blaming the victim. I've constantly said, well, that's just ridiculous. But in the same context, you can say, all right, Steve Smith did nothing wrong, he was just repeating Cameron Bancroft's lies, but he should have checked. So in that respect, we have a precedent in Australian cricket to ban Steve Smith from captaincy for a year. So his captaincy ban was actually fair in light of the Ricky Ponting thing. But should Steve Smith have been banned from the game for a year as well as that 1 year captaincy ban? Simple answer is no. Smith didn't really do very much wrong. He repeated Bancroft's lie, and he deserved a 1 match ban and a 1 year captaincy ban for that. But the 1 year all cricket ban was a bit harsh. So Smith was treated harshly, at least in terms of his playing ban. His captaincy ban was actually fair enough. And I think most people watching that will say that's fair enough. And so he wasn't treated very harshly, but was a little bit harshly. But considering what happened to Warner, Smith got off lightly. Now, we get on to the Warner situation. Now, at this stage, we're looking at what should have been a 1 year ban from Bancroft, at least from international cricket. But then we get on to the Warner situation. Now, Warner did nothing wrong, and I've said this before, but what happened was that he was saying, well, everybody knew. And because of that, Mitchell Starc, who had hated David Warner for a very long time, stood up and said he didn't want to be in the same team with Warner and demanded Warner to be banned. And it was pretty much a political situation. Starc saw an opportunity to hurt his long-time rival Warner, and he did it. This is very dishonest and very manipulative of Starc. And because of that, Starc deserved 1 or 2 match ban for that. We know that for an absolute fact. Starc has apologised, he said it's fine. Well, he hasn't admitted to it, but he still said, well, he shouldn't have been saying that sort of thing. So it'd probably be unfair to now go back and say, well, Starc, you deserved a 1 or 2 match ban, let's put it in now. It's a bit late, it's so many years later. But because then after that, Bancroft took advantage of the situation to blame the whole thing on Warner and defame him, really, you now have to look at Bancroft as pretty disruptive. And I would think that a permanent ban for Bancroft, at least from international cricket, should have been put in place. Now, he could continue playing for his state, I think that's at a different level, they can decide that for themselves. But it should have been a permanent ban, or at least an indefinite ban, and then he'd have to make a proper apology and prove that he's redeemed himself in order to be considered again. Because on an integrity level, Bancroft has no business being anywhere near the Australian cricket team. No business whatsoever on an integrity level. You can't trust him. So, Warner should have faced no penalties at all. Warner did absolutely nothing wrong. And now when we're talking about a captaincy ban, and so he served his 1 year, which was completely unwarranted and unjustified. The only way that we could consider that was reasonable was that Smith was also facing a 1 year ban, which was also completely unjustified, when Smith should have only been facing a captaincy ban and a 1 match ban. So that's the only justification that you can have for putting Warner under there, is that you say, well, Smith got unfairly treated too, let's do them both, the captain and vice captain. But it was very, very unfair. Even if you take the view, which is a completely false view, by the way, but you take the view that Warner somehow magically had amazing levels of power and influence and forced Bancroft to do it, nobody else is being penalised for that. Even if he did do it, it doesn't warrant this sort of penalty. So, and it didn't happen, I'll just say it didn't happen, but it couldn't have happened. He had no power, there's no evidence other than Bancroft's own lies. And I'm saying Bancroft's lies because he told so many different versions of different stories that are just incompatible, just impossible. So, you know, it's not like he was updating it, he just completely changed the story all the time. So, the situation now is that we should really be revisiting this and saying, all right, Bancroft, you're an absolute liar, we do not trust you, you are banned for life. And that can be appealed perhaps, but we're banning you for life for now. Warner and Smith, we're going to exonerate you in retrospect, and we're going to say you did nothing wrong. And Smith, yes, you shouldn't have lied about it, but other than that, nothing wrong. We're going to retrospectively exonerate you. We're going to repay you $5 or $6 million, whatever your loss was, and all captaincy bans are retrospectively lifted. We're sorry we got it wrong. And as for Mitchell Starc, look, I think politically you don't mention it, but realistically you acknowledge that he had a part to play. And that's it. There's no way that you should be still banning David Warner. Absolutely not. And the evidence that's now come to light, which we already knew realistically, just proves it further. So anyway, is there an avenue to not ban Bancroft for life? Absolutely, for political reasons. We really should be, but if we don't, that's okay. Anyway, that's it from me. Bye bye now.